to get rid of Alex Navarro today. I decided enough was enough. I need some fresh blood, and so that fresh blood I found in the depths of J.R.R. Tolkien. I don't know. I feel like I should have asked you ahead of time if there was some sort of depth of blood lore thing that I could have dropped, like Nazgulioth. But I know the Nazgul is a thing. I'm not that ignorant. I know at least Nazgul is it's a wraith, right? It's a wraith.
Yeah, it was actually a really good mashup of two things. Nazgul is the one of the terms for the ring wraiths. Those are the nine, and then you said Gileath, which is like very common suffix. And
Okay.
I think it's Quenya.
All right. Sweet. All right. Well, for people that don't know what the hell we're talking about, and I don't mean Lord of the Rings, I'm joined this morning by Alexa Corriea of Polygon. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Us implies there are other people around, which and then I've got my own issues to deal with, which true enough, but I swear it's just me and the coffee
Okay, I believe you.
for
You and the
now.
coffee.
Although, to be fair, occasionally my dog does wander in here and hang out with me, so it could be in us. It could be all things. It could be true, it could be false. I guess we'll just have to see how it goes. But I told you about this, Alexa, but apologize to the video viewers. The lighting situation this morning is a little bit out of control. What I now realize is I need to invest in a desk lamp because right now, if the sun comes in, like if I guess it's a cloudy day, is what I've discovered, then it flares up like there is a sun flare, and if I bring down the blinds, it doesn't do anything, and the lamp there is too far back, and it's a mess. Monday is a mess. Mondays are a mess.
I think Mondays are allowed to be a mess, but if the mess spills into Tuesday, no. So you have exactly one day to fix your lighting situation.
Okay, all right. Well, at least I've got a deadline. That's more than I don't usually have deadlines these days, so I'm glad that someone is at least giving my life a deadline, which is fix your lighting situation, you asshole. I can do that. I can do that.
Fix your lighting sitch.
So, how have you been? What have you been up to? What has Lex Ray Korea been up to in the month or so since we have had you on the show last?
Oh my gosh, what have I been doing? Well, the last time you had me on the show, I lived in New York. I've since moved to Connecticut.
So you have officially moved to Connecticut.
Yep, I'm in the middle of the woods, Connecticut.
That sounds kind of nice. That seems like that's not necessarily a downgrade. That seems like, especially after city life, I moved. My change was San Francisco to Chicago, which is a change enough. But don't worry, I know the suburbs are coming into my life at a rapidly approaching pace. But what prompted the move to Connecticut?
My lease was running around, so like New York is great. Don't get me wrong, New York is great. Food's really great. People are okay. But I moved there last year, and I told myself, I'll give myself a year. I'll see what happens, because it was sort of like, I don't like subways, little sticky people crowding you. And my lease was running out, and I was like, you know what? No. So I've moved to the middle of Connecticut, and it's been a really nice change. I like the fresh air, and also my dog is here. I couldn't have my dog when I was in the city. So now that my parents had her, so now that I'm out here, I have my dog, which is probably the best thing about being out here.
Yeah, Chicago is surprisingly pet-friendly in that respect, or at least when my wife and I were looking for places and we said, hey, it needs to be a spot, that accepts pets. We found a decent number of places. It didn't seem like it totally limited what we were looking for, but I don't know if New York is different in that respect.
I'm just worried. So, like, I'm my dog, and for anyone who follows me on Twitter, you've seen thousands of pictures of my dog. All I do is take photos of my dog. But she's a miniature Doberman Pinscher, and she's very excitable, and she loves people. Like, if you were to walk in my back door, she would jump on you, like smell you, like she wants to be picked up. She wants to smell your face, and then she gives you the once over, and she's like, all right, you're a cool person, and then she'll be generally cool while you're here. But
Right.
she has to do that with everyone she sees. So like when I'm walking her, if someone's out working in their lawn, it's like, oh, gotta smell the person. There's a person. So my worry with New York would be like, okay, so the only place to walk her is like sidewalks and streets.
Yeah.
And I can't walk down the street with her being like, oh my God, like there's a person. I got to smell that person. I got to lick that person. Like she just wants to be around people. So a little too excitable. I'd be worried that she would maybe run into a street, get hit by a car. She has Houdini'd out of almost every harness we've gotten her.
Ooh.
She's really tiny. She's like, she's 12 pounds, so she's like this little nubby thing.
Yeah, I'm familiar with tiny ass dogs
Tiny ass dog.
and the weird things they get into.
Oh, we keep having to buy her new ones. The new one we have, like, straps around her and has all of these, like, buckles. Like, she looks like I've basically strapped her into, like, she has too many belts. She looks like a Final Fantasy character. She's got, like, the belts and then, like, the
Let's get a Nomura diss in here. I'm all right with that. Yeah, I'm on board.
Oh yeah, no, she's just buckled into this thing now because the last one we were walking and she saw a snake and she was like, "Oh, I want to play with the snake." I'm like, "That's a snake. You don't want to go over there." We talk to each other in our heads.
Understandable. Any
But
pet owner knows what that's about.
Oh yeah, your head talking with your pet. And she wanted this snake. I'm like, "No, we're not gonna have the snake." So she turned and looked at me and then did this like whoop, and she was out of the harness and after the snake, and I was just like, "No!" And she's like, "No, I gotta see the snake. I'll be back in a second." And I had to run after her, and like it was just bad news bears. So we got her like the multi-strap thing now.
Jeez.
The little parachute on it, yeah. So I don't think she would make it in New York. She'd be like, "Oh, what's that?" and then run into a car and be a pancake. And I would like to be a dog owner.
You can't talk to a pancake. As far as I know, it's 2014, but the technology has not been invented where you can talk to pancakes.
Yeah, I'd prefer if she stayed jelly bean shaped, and not pancake.
That's fair. That's fair. Have you been playing any good video games lately, or bad video games? You know, you don't have to limit it to the good ones.
Bad video games. So I've actually spent, and I'm sure you probably talked about this to death with everyone, but I've spent a really stupid amount of time playing PT.
No, so okay, this is good. No, this is good. This is good because we talked about it on Friday, and I've got some videos of myself acting like an idiot on the site, being legitimately. I don't appreciate in the comments people say, "Hey, stop playing it up," because that makes me feel bad because I wasn't playing it up.
Oh my god, that's
reactions were genuine.
Horrifying. I was playing. I thought I was alone in the house, and I was playing in my room, and I had all the lights off. And the first time I encountered anything was the bathroom door, where you hear the baby crying and you can't open the door. Some people I talked to didn't have this happen, and the door opened all the way, and they were able to walk in.
Huh.
But the door opened a little bit, and I couldn't figure out how to open it. So I was like, "What?" And they don't tell you, but like, or maybe they did, and I was too terrified and didn't notice.
No, they definitely didn't. They definitely didn't tell you. The chat on my website told me what to do in this situation.
But like, you have to you press R3 and that zooms in.
Right.
So I'm like, what's in there? And I hear the baby crying. I'm like, oh, there's a baby. And I have this with animals and like babies, I can't stand to hear them crying. Like I'm like, no, I have to help this baby. So like crying babies on airplanes, I can't. And this baby's crying, and I'm like, oh, I have to help the baby. So I zoom in, and I'm like, where is the baby? And the ghost or whatever it was, I didn't see it, reaches out really fast and closes the door. And I screamed. And I guess my sibling had come in to the house and didn't know that I was home. So I screamed, and then he screamed, and then I screamed, and then it was this like back and forth of like like so that's
really great. And when I played that sequence, so I've recently acquired a second monitor, and as a way of being able to play and stream console games. So that's how I was able to do PT. And some weirdness in my setup that I'm still figuring out. But long story short, I was playing it on a monitor, my primary monitor, the same one where I capture it. And if I didn't move my mouse every once in a while, the screen would go black, as monitors are wont to do.
Oh no!
When you haven't touched them in a while. And so somehow, miraculously, when I pressed R3 to zoom in on that door, when it triggers the sequence where the ghost pulls the door shut, my monitor went black before it happened. So everyone on the stream flips the fuck out because they see this ghost slam this door shut. I turn the monitor back on and go, well, that was weird. Like, my monitor just went out. And so everyone in the chat is freaking out, going, like, why didn't he react to this horrifying jump scare? It's because, like, of all the moments, that's when my monitor chose to go out, and
Oh,
I
that's
did
the
not
worst.
even see it. I was unfazed. I got to see the creepy eraser head baby, but I didn't have that initial scare at all, which was, I feel like I was saved, but I enjoy that stuff. So I actually, it kind of bummed me out that I didn't actually understand what exactly I had missed. So it sounds like you, like me, have, I have some real serious problems with the way it ends up playing out that feel like really shouldn't be held against it because it was designed as a viral marketing tool and it's not an example of like exemplary game design because it was never meant to be. But it sounds like you are on board with me in this being utterly terrifying.
Oh, it's I've played it in like the first time I played it for about 45 minutes, and when I finally got to see the baby, which I think it's like a half-developed fetus, I was like, no, and I just had to walk away. And then I went back, and on Saturday I spent like something like 3 hours sitting in it because the first time I beat it twice, and the first time I beat it, I gave up, and I was like, you have to collect picture pieces, or you
Yep.
need I was like, I don't. So I stood by the phone because I know the phone has to ring. So I literally parked my ass by the phone and went about doing other things and just let it run.
So you got like the creepy ghosts appearing because that's the sequence where like there's two ghosts in different areas of the hallways and there's creepy noises happening around you. So you just parked your character's ass right in front of that phone and said, "I'm gonna clean the dust off of this desk."
Yeah, I parked it and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna do things. I like did laundry and like I was actually folding it and the phone rang and I'm like, the phone's ringing. The phone's ringing and it's like it's the phone in the thing. So, and then it triggered the ending and I'm just like. I literally did nothing for an hour. I just like stood there. And the second time I beat it, I walked through the whole sequence 5 times. And then the last time when I did it, the Silent Hill ghost
Uh-huh.
appears and kind of like goes through you. And the
Yeah.
radio is talking, and the radio goes, "Don't look behind you." And I'm like, "Oh, I'm not gonna." And the thing ate me. It like popped out and ate me. And then it went right into the trailer, and I was like, "Oh,
Oh
what
wait,
did I
really?
do?" Yeah, I was like, what did I do? And I had gone in and like I tried to get all the pieces, so I wonder if like I had the pieces and it was like, "Oh, you have the pieces, here you go."
Yeah,
Um
it seems like intentionally they're like there seems to be commonality with the phone. Like the phone is one way of triggering the ending, but how you actually get the phone to ring seems to not lie in any sort of logic. It seems like there at that
yeah.
point there's all sorts of red herrings. If you're going through, like if you go through the second door after or during the bells ringing, then that switches the color on your flashlight, which would seem to indicate that you're making some sort of progression,
Yeah.
but then you don't actually, it seems like it's pretty random. Like there may be a logic that determines it, but it may not necessarily all be clear to the player, and it definitely, I sympathize with folks that are, then call it garbage and don't want to finish it because it's frustrating when you
Um,
can't, even if you can watch the trailer on YouTube, you just want to say that you finished it.
yeah, that you saw it on your TV and that you didn't, have to, I've seen Norman Reedus on my TV. No, it's awful. And I know that this is what Kojima wanted. They want people like they want the community to like work together to like figure out how to do it. But it's sort of like I don't know. It's frustrating. I had people calling me like
I
someone was
still
like,
think it's poorly designed even
yeah,
for that.
yeah,
I understood what they were going for, the idea that make it purposely obtuse, make it uh, so that you have to kind of talk to other people to figure out what the commonalities are behind progression. But there's one way of doing it, which is like Fez is a good example from the last couple of years, where I think to this day people don't even know how to actually solve the monolith, which is one of the late game puzzles in that, and it was actually just brute forced uh, through sheer numbers to figure out what the solution is. But that game has hidden languages and there's things you can decode. It often feels like in PT it's designed with a bunch of red herrings, but those red herrings don't ultimately lead to any evidence that the community can use
yeah,
together to solve something. Like there's no community solving. What it ends up being is just someone stumbles upon the ending, but cannot provide any meaningful information to the community to trigger it for themselves, which I think then probably says, well, it's A, bad game design if you just want to on your own finish this thing, and then B, it's bad design, bad viral design, or whatever, however you want to characterize it.
Yeah.
If you wanted it to be something that a group of people get together and figure out together.
Yeah, it is. I agree that it's probably bad viral design in that case, if like you're expecting people to be able to like groupthink it, especially if most of it's random. But like, I think it's brilliant because the way that they did it, like everyone's talking about it. It got announced what on Tuesday, and people are still like so focused on it. It's
Yeah,
been like
we're talking like if they had just announced a new Silent Hill game, it would basically just would have been a wet fart. I mean, you know, I guess if they'd announced Kojima was involved and Guillermo del Toro was involved, you know, that would have made it a little more interesting. But it's the specific way that they announced this through a playable interactive teaser that I can't. I have to imagine this is going to be much more common, much more quickly. But I
Yeah.
think there's something unique about the fact that it was Kojima, the fact that it's a horror game. Like, I don't think this would work for a lot of games. I think releasing interactive teasers for as a way of announcing a game, I think that's way more interesting than a CG trailer if you can pull it off. So I think it's sort of a win-win no matter what. But I also think there is something wholly unique about this situation that
Yeah.
not everyone would be able to replicate even if they tried.
I think if it had been like, let's say like I don't B-list, C-list, I don't know, like a developer that no one has heard of, or a big, or you know, not someone who's not like Kojima level, and then some director, I feel like, and then an actor that nobody knew. I feel like in any other circumstance, because there's so much star power behind it, I feel like
Yeah.
if the game didn't have that kind of creative team, it would just be like, oh, like why, like whatever. But because they're all so big, Guillermo del Toro, Kojima, freaking Norman Reedus, like I don't think anyone else would be able to like get away with it being like, oh yeah, here's the thing, find out on your own. Because I feel like a lot of people during that press conference, it was announced and people were like, all right, and I feel like most of us dismissed it as like, all right, well I guess we'll check this out later. And then one person finished it and it was just like, so
Yeah, I started to get a little bit feeling that something was up when some of the Sony employees I follow on Twitter were like, hey, can't wait to see what you guys find in PT. Can't believe that people haven't figured out what's in PT yet. So, you know, it was clear fairly early that there was something more going on, but I certainly could not have predicted it would end up being
no.
exactly what it turned out to be. Do you like what's your relationship with the Silent Hill series? Are you mine is that I love 1 and 2, didn't play 3 or 4, and then got back on board with the last couple and deeply regret all of those hours of my life.
I was a latecomer to the series, and I played 1 and 2, and I really liked them, and I played 3, and 3 was okay, but I didn't make it. I haven't made it past 3 in the sense that like I had the game and I started it,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't like I never got far. I didn't get far enough into it that I feel comfortable being like I played Silent Hill 4, like. So I'm sort of now backtracking, going into like maybe like replay or start over. So when this game comes out in 3 years, I'll be ready for it.
Yeah, I also expected this game is a ways off. It seems this was more a way of, hey, Metal Gear comes out in 2015, at some point, assumingly, and this is just a little taste of, the game that Konami is going to be pushing for the next 2 years at least. I can't imagine this game comes out anywhere sooner than, October 2016. If I had to throw
Yeah.
a dart at the wall, that's my guess when we actually see this. I'd love to be surprised, but I suspect that this game is a long ways off. But at least in the interim, you have a thing you can play. Like it's not every week are we like Ubisoft style watching yet another 7-minute trailer of some bullshit. Like there's a concrete thing you can play. Like it's gonna run. It's not gonna be interesting in a couple of weeks, but a year from now, if you're like around Halloween, man, I'm really looking forward to Silent Hills. You've got this interactive trailer that
Yeah.
you can play that will be scary again a year from now when you've kind of forgotten, a lot of the little touches.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited about it. A lot of people are saying that on Twitter, I saw a couple people talking about this. They think that, or there's a theory that Silent Hills is going to be a Morpheus title because we were in first person walking around.
I really hope that's not true, in the sense that I really hope it's true, but I've messed with some pretty rudimentary horror prototypes on the Oculus Rift. I have the original dev kit kicking around, and one of the videos I did on the site was I downloaded what was available horror-wise and played those. And the amazing thing about VR is that you can build the crappiest thing in the world, and it's 1,000 times more immersive than what you get out of an ordinary monitor. And part of that may be the novelty factor, right? Like that may disappear as we, venture forth into VR becoming possibly a regular part of our interactive options. And it's just, oh, tonight I'm going to do a VR thing, and tonight I'm going to play on a monitor. But I played some really awful horror games that on a monitor would do nothing for you. But when that monitor is right up by your eyeballs,
oh, I bet.
It could be the most crudely constructed polygonal ghost in the world, but all it needs is a loud scream and centimeters from your eyeballs, and I was flipping the fuck out.
I can't. How do you do that? I can't.
And the idea that they would put millions and millions of dollars behind a high-budget version of one of those, no, sir. No, don't do it. But do it because then I'll play it.
I just don't like that teaser. PT is scary. There are scary things that happen. Like, did you ever encounter all of the lights turning red? Where like the whole hallway is in that like red
it goes
wash?
like Jacob's ladder on you, and it's just completely surreal, and you're like moving super fast through the hallways.
And there's that thing, and then like it has the cooler hanging where the light fixture was.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that's a different one. Okay, yeah, I got that one. Yeah, where it seems to be then insinuating that's the sequence when you're remembering you murdered your wife, I guess. And did you notice in one of the scenes, when you get to that same front door area, and you know how you can look up and there's an upstairs that you can't get to?
Mm-hmm.
So during one of the sequences, if you look up, there is a guy up there. Just
all right. I never encountered Guy.
Yeah, no, I was walking through, and I guess I can't remember what the moment was. I guess maybe I hadn't quite figured out what to do next. But either way, I look up, and there's just a guy in a mask, kind of Halloweenish, like Michael Myers, and he's not moving. He's not doing anything. He's just staring at you, and all you can do is click R3 and kind of make out that there is a guy looking at you from the second floor, and that's it.
No, I didn't have that happen.
Yeah.
I turned the corner, and mine was, the blood was swinging. It was like swinging, and I was like, and I stood there looking at it, and then I immediately turned around and got attacked by ghost number 2. So. Yeah,
so
no.
I think the summary of this conversation is, if you have not played PT, you should play PT. And also, if you're afraid that any of this spoiled it, it means nothing when you actually play it, because the way the game, or the teaser, I guess, I don't know, you could almost just recommend PT. Just stop playing it after 45 minutes and don't try and beat it. And everything about the way that PT employs its sound, its visual trickery. I think you could read exactly everything that happens in it, and it would still be incredibly effective. Yeah,
it's a thing. It's a playable teaser. It sure is.
It is a playable teaser. I spent the weekend I'm very close. I'm now at the final battle. Playing this game, Divinity: Original Sin.
Oh yeah, I've seen you tweeting about that. People are.
Yeah, it's a CRPG. It's like an old school, Baldur's Gate kind of style RPG, but in the modern era that was Kickstarter funded, and it's an excellent game. But I've spent 65 or 70 hours with it, and I'm ready to move on to the next thing. It's kind of all I've played regularly for the last month or so. But I've talked about the game itself on the show before, and I don't think there's nothing really interesting to share there. But there's a couple things that can't have come up in the last like dozen or so hours I've played. So CRPGs, I guess, are famous for being fairly obscure
Hmm.
in terms of quest solutions and just like generally speaking, it puts a lot of the onus on the player, and I'm not used to that. So like, whereas in like a Skyrim, you've got a big old arrow pointing you in the direction of what you need to do, and that's a lot of modern games. I think a lot of modern games take that a little too far, but Divinity takes it all the way back, where it's just the quest log gives you zero indication about what you're supposed to be doing next. If you want to find the Rat King, you need to on your own figure out that you need to combine poison with cheese and put that in a rat hole. Like there's at no point does the game tell you,
Amazing.
hey, maybe think about poisoning the cheese and putting it in the rat hole. So what I've been doing for probably the second half of the game is where I started running into quest issues. Is I've just been playing with sort of like a guide handy. I don't reference it 100% of the time, but I've got it kind of sitting on my second monitor. And if I find myself legitimately just stuck, I just go right to it. And I just, I still have to do all of the combat, and the combat's really the reason you're playing the game. It's sort of the tactical, environmentally manipulating combat is sort of the core of what you're playing Divinity for. So I don't feel like I'm altering my fun of the game. If anything, I'm just sort of streamlining it. And I don't know, it's cheating, I guess, which as someone that is, a paid games writer, reporter, whatever,
That's cheating.
in some way feels like I should be above that, but I'm having more fun with the game as a result.
I think there's nothing wrong using stuff to get through if you're stuck. Using calling up game facts, calling up a thing like that's why people write them, so people can get through the tough parts. I don't think it knocks your gamer cred at all.
Well, I think it's also a case where what I'm coming to the game for is different than the spots I'm getting stuck at, right? So I'm not downloading some sort of cheat engine so I can like buff up my characters and just steamroll through, a series of tough combat trials. Instead, what I'm doing is just I don't really care for the story that much. I'm really doing the quests mostly so I can get experience for my characters. I don't really care if I don't know how to just naturally discover the poison and the cheese. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. It's come up with me with a couple of games. I got really into the 999 and VLR visual novel series on DS and 3DS, and VLR came out on Vita as well. And that was another series where I regularly referenced a FAQ and in order to get through some of the puzzle sequences because I was there for the story. So it was like the inverse in that situation where I cared about the story. I did not care about the puzzles. The puzzles just happened to be there. So I'd engage with them to the point where I got frustrated, and then once I got frustrated, it was like, I'm moving on. It's not what I'm here for. But I guess my point is that sometimes there are games you come to where everything they offer is not necessarily what you want to engage with.
Yeah. I did that with, God, I hate bringing this game up. I did that with Lightning Returns because you level up by completing side quests, and at one point in the game, I was just like, you know what, like, game's been out for like 3 weeks, like, I don't care, I want to finish this game, I don't want to go on dates. The world is ending, and you have to like corral sheep and go on dates, and it's just like, no. So I called up like a game fac, and it's like, go here to do the date, like you have to collect firecrackers. I'm like, go to the firecracker place. Like it's sometimes you have to do that, like before the game just completely loses you. Find just a way to walk through it. I don't know.
I think that was my fear too. Was that if I didn't resort to this stuff, I was going to just say screw it and just and move on, which I didn't want to do. Like I was truly enjoying a lot of parts of the game, and just because I was hung up on a bunch of the puzzles in the game are predicated on altering, like moving the camera with the mouse and swinging it into a certain angle to see a tiny switch on a wall, which is odd considering I have a ranged character whose one of his main attributes is perception, and what that character does is I have him lead the party, and he'll notice that there are traps on the ground. He'll notice there are secret mounds that you can dig up and find loot. But for whatever reason, he can't point out that there's a switch on the wall.
God, that's weird. That's
Which
an
seems like an oversight in game
Yeah.
design that I am then just rectifying with, a walkthrough, and I don't like. That's at least a situation where I'd be like, the game did this wrong. The game should have this character point out this switch on the wall, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to zoom in with the mouse wheel and carefully look around like, this giant space, just hoping I will find a switch waiting for me to push.
That's crappy design. Or that's sad design.
But I think that's what walkthroughs can aid in that. Like when games are really long and they aren't at their, they aren't totally on, for most games that entire period. And if the option is giving up on a game and not seeing what it has to offer all the way to the end, or sort of cheating the system a little bit, like I don't feel too bad about that.
Yeah, no, nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with using walkthroughs. Yeah, no, I can't. Like, there are so many games that I've given up on because I didn't want to, or I didn't think to look up a walkthrough, or I thought, I don't want to sit here and sit there, go through the page, and then go back and forth with it. I think that happened with the latter half of the new Luigi's Mansion. I sort of gave up on it because there were some puzzles where I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do, and ended up just giving up on it because I got tired of using the game pack.
Yeah, I guess you could have. I mean, yeah. At the same time, I guess I could imagine that scenario where you're referencing it so much that it's like, well, what am I doing, right? Like, 'cause at least in Divinity, I'm advancing through some quest lines and some puzzles, but then getting to some really satisfying combat, which is what I'm there for in the first place, as opposed to a lot of what you're doing in Luigi's Mansion at that point is solving puzzles. So if you're circumventing the main gameplay function, then maybe that is the signal that you should actually move on.
Yeah, I remember I was playing it because I got this idea in my head last year that I wanted to play everything as it came out because so much was coming out, and our job is to play these games and talk about them and talk to the people that make them. And I just feel like our time is so limited. Like we should know everything that's coming out. At least I feel like we should. But at the same time, our time is limited. Like we go to events and get half an hour with a game and then have to write a gameplay preview, or we have 2 days to review a 40-hour JRPG. So I wanted to finish the game, but I was in a time crunch, so I thought, well, okay, maybe I'll just get a little help on this. And then at that point, I was like, well, maybe it's not worth me if I'm gonna look up how to do it, and then
Yeah. I also have huge, and I've talked about this on the show before. The viewers are well aware. I have real trouble giving up on things. Like once I start it, it's got to be real bad for me to give it up, because I like to give games the benefit of the doubt, even ones that kind of get cruddy. I tend to get to choose to pick, the games I get to play are largely pretty good, so even the ones that I'm trudging through are, on the higher end of mediocrity, but I don't usually...
higher end of mediocrity.
Yeah. It's a high, that's the back of the box quote if I ever heard one.
Yep.
And so I just try and finish things because I try and give the game as much as my time as I can, but that backfires horribly all the time. It's not. I don't necessarily agree it's a great practice. I mean, you should probably try and finish games if you're reviewing them, to as much of a point as you can. But I'm largely not reviewing games, so maybe it's just I just like flagging myself over and over with these bad games, I guess.
I can't not finish a game I'm reviewing. I will feel guilty if I put out a review being like, I did not complete this game.
Yeah, I don't know if I could do that. If a reviewer chooses to do that and then make sure and points that out in the review, I don't, principally have a problem with that, but I have not come across a situation where I got so stuck or frustrated that I was unable to go on.
Yeah. I don't know. I get stuck with some really weird games for review. I guess that's Arthur's fault. I just finished early last week. I just finished Akiba's Trip.
What is that?
The one where it's a I wanted to describe the game as Nihongo as fuck because it's just so
Okay.
like entrenched in Japanese culture. It's like it's about otaku culture, and it's spot on. Like the way they lampoon it is like so good, and the dialogue is really good, and the localization for the dialogue is really good. However, the actual like gameplay mechanics are really stupid. So the whole premise is like you've been turned into a vampire of sorts. You're an energy vampire, and you walk around. Your mission is to walk around Akiba. Uh,
Akihabara?
yeah, Akiba is like the short slang term for it,
Oh, okay.
and they call it Akiba in the game. So
Okay.
Akiba, you walk around Akiba, and you suck the energy from the otakus and the fashionistas and everyone. And at the beginning of the game, you're rescued by this like 100-year-old being who's actually a petite, perky anime girl in a
Oh, you
dress.
don't say.
Yeah, and she shares her blood with you and turns and like saves you. So you're no longer like a vampire, but now you're her like familiar. You're like her partner forever. You guys are bound together
Oh.
for eternity. And you go tell your friends, and your friends just unflinchingly accept this as like, yeah, we got to go get rid of all those other energy vampires. So you,
It's very understanding friends.
oh yeah, it's bizarre. So you and your friends, and you can take one person with you on every like patrol, and you go to different sections of the city, and you just fight these vampires. And how you defeat them is you beat them up. You have 3 attack buttons. You can punch their head, or hit their head with whatever you're carrying, or you can punch their torso, or you can punch their legs, and you weaken their clothing, and then you rip their clothing off. And what
Uh-huh.
you have to do, that's like the strip part. So you defeat these vampires by ripping all their clothes off and exposing them to sunlight, and then they melt. And it's
So wait, so these vampires are capable of going out in the day because they wear too many clothes.
because they wear too many clothes, and you can you are also one of these vampires. So if the vampires rip your clothes off, you die.
Oh, that's bad.
Yeah, so you're basically fighting these people, and at this one point, I think I finally like realized how absurd this game was around hour 6. I was in a group of maids. I was attacked by a group of like cafe maids wearing like cat
Hmm.
ears and their little dresses, and I'm just pulling, and the animations for pulling their clothes off are like you punch them in the gut and then you rip them off, and they're like, "Oh my God!" and they're like in their underwear running around screaming, and I'm
As they die.
ripping as they die, and I'm ripping these girls' dresses off, and then somebody ripped my pants. You play as a boy, and
Okay.
someone ripped my pants off, and I was just like, what am I doing? Like I had this.
It's an existential, like, what am I doing with my life? What am I doing in this game? If someone was to walk in on me right now, how would I explain this?
It was awful because at one point the game the game glitched out as I was you fight to this like techno music, and the game glitched out as I was ripping these girls' skirts off. That sounds so horrible to say, but like the
Yeah,
game
just
glitched
just let
out
this sink in. Just let the sentence you just uttered. Just let that marinate for a little while.
as I was ripping
What are you
skirts
doing
off.
with your life? Like,
But the game glitched out with the sound, and the girls make these like like these really awful like sexy noises as you're like this like a scared oh my God as you're doing whatever you're doing.
yeah.
And it glitched out, and it kept making the same noise over and over in time with the techno
Oh
music. So
no.
I was like, why is this happening? The only other person in the house at the time was my dog, and my dog is sleeping on my bed next to me. And it keeps going for like a minute because I'm still fighting this horde of maids. And she just sat up and then looked at the TV and then looked over at me, and I'm like, my dog is judging me right now. Like, my dog can't handle this because the sound's like high pitched, and she sort of sat there and looked at me like, are you going to stop this? Are you going to finish? It's just my review's not up yet, but hopefully it will be soon. But that game is a
I like
very
that
strange game.
your characterization of it was so at hour 6, then I realized something was weird. So for the first 5 hours, I've seen weirder.
It was weird. Well, it sort of has this like. I mean, I'm not going to compare it to Persona because it's not as good as Persona, but like you have this opportunity where you can like strengthen your romantic relationship with one of I think like 5 female characters, including the girl
Uh huh.
who helped you be a vampire or whatever. And you have like those little like anime cutscenes where the girls are just like, even if you're not human, I'll always be here for you. And I'm just like, okay, all right, let's do this. And like some of the dialogue, like the dialogue, actually the localization is really funny. There's some really interesting parts. Like one of the girls is a Finnish exchange student, and the way that they translated her is like they'll keep messing up the words she uses, which I'm assuming like it's better in the Japanese. You can do like the Japanese audio, and it's better in the Japanese because it's like, oh, actually, like you mispronounced the word and you said something different. But it's like it's very clever. The combat is just no.
Is
just
the
the
game
ripping.
at all self-aware? Because sometimes you'll see in the localization for some of these games they'll kind of wink wink, nod nod at the fact that, you know, it's the premise is kind of out there, or, you know, I hate saying very Japanese. I feel like that's like too broad and dismissive,
Yeah.
but it's certainly a product of Japan, and like, is the game at all knowing about this, or is it very sort of self-serious in how it takes its kind of general premise and some of the absurdity with how it sort of treats women?
I mean, I really don't. It's weird because it treats both men and women, like it objectifies both of them.
Okay, I guess, I feel like that's better.
Yeah. No. Because you have like both men and women coming at you, and you're like ripping off their stuff. But there's a couple of boss battles where like you're fighting an older woman who is very attractive, and then you're fighting one of your enemies who's this very attractive young man. And when you rip their clothes off, it gets this like across the screen is like this anime still. They're like, oh, and you get like a shot of his like naked torso with glitter around it or something. And then like with like the woman, it's like you get like the anime shots of like her being like, oh, I'm covering up, not really, like and like they do it with the guys too. Like you get the at one point in a fight, I had managed to rip off everyone's bottoms, but they still had their shirts on. So I had like dudes in their tidy whities, and then girls in like their little whatever, you know, their girly underwear running around me, and I was just like, everyone around me is not wearing pants, and I have to get the rest of their clothes off to kill them. That was this past hour 6. So like
that seems hey, that seems at least interesting. You know, there are plenty of games you could be assigned that are not nearly, at least, I mean, I don't know what to say about this game except that I have never heard anything like it.
It's the fun part about it is it's called, the English title is Akiba's Trip Undead and Undressed.
That's a pretty funny title.
Yeah, but it's the second Akiba's Trip. Akiba's Trip.
Akiba's Trip might actually be a better. I think you may have fumbled into a better title for this game.
Akiba's Trip. I think it's intentional. Akiba's Trip. But it's the second game. The first one was not. The first one I don't think was localized. I have to double check that. But the first one is somewhere else. But we got this one. And it's out for PlayStation 3 and Vita, so you can use your fingers to undress people, or you can use a controller.
Come on, no.
Yeah, no, it's pretty. It's a weird game. It's a weird game. And right off of that, I'm going straight into Hatoful Boyfriend. So like, I'm just all about the.
That's the pigeon romance. Dating simulation, right?
Yeah, I played the original. This is the Devolver remake, but I played the original. It's just the most, it plays it like it's the most natural thing. Like, oh yeah, I'm the only woman left on Earth, and I'm going to a high school full of pigeons, and I'm going to romance one of these pigeons. This is like the most natural thing.
You are picking some interesting straws out of the Polygon review like basket, like the ones that you were getting assigned in these slow months of summer.
As long as I get Shadow of Mordor, I will do whatever.
Oh man, is just your penance? Like you just have to pay your dues in the summer with these games, and then you'll be granted access to Shadows of Mordor and Shadow.
Shadow. Mordor. There's one Shadow.
There's one Shadow. And
it could be it could mean the actual Shadow of Mordor itself, or it could be Talion, because they call him Gravewalker, and he's 6 going through. He could be the Shadow. I like it. It's like the double meaning. Sorry.
No, just keep going, keep going.
No, I'm really excited for that game. They announced during Gamescom that like Gollum is going to have a really big role in the story, and I was really excited
Ooh.
about that. Um, so yeah, I don't know.
And they
I
moved
think
up the
I could
release
talk
date.
forever. They did. They moved it up, except for PC. PC is October 2nd.
Oh, I think when it was actually going to be like that was the previous release date, right? Like was the week later. They moved it
It
a week
was
up on consoles.
it was the 14th
Oh, okay.
or the 21st. No, no, no. It was the 21st because the 21st was the day that was like Shadow of Mordor, Alien Isolation, Evil Within,
Right.
something else, some NBA game, sports game,
It was
like
NBA. Battlefield Hardline was also going to come out in October. I think was
Hardline.
the
Everything's coming out in October.
and then
Fantasia.
Dragon Age was going to come out in October, and now
Mm,
that's November.
yeah. God. And then everyone started. I think Evil Within bumped up their release date. Shadow of
Yep.
Mordor bumped up. Dragon Age pushed. Hardline delayed
Yep.
next year. October was going to be a mess. Is still kind of a mess.
It is a little bit, but the fall seems a little more manageable. Like
Yeah.
it's theoretical to me that I'll, with the exception of Dragon Age, which I do want to play. I've never played one of those before, and this seems like a good one
Ooh,
to jump
welcome.
into. It's part of the reason I played Divinity was like get myself kind of in an old school RPG mindset because I wanted to finally play a Dragon Age game, and I was gonna play 2, but it was such a polarizing opinions on it that I just kind of washed my hands of it and didn't get into it. But 3 seems, by all accounts so far, like a very approachable entry into the series. And but yeah, it's like October, if you're into horror games, then October is a little complicated because you've got
Yeah.
Evil Within and Alien Isolation. But horror games tend to not be crazy long. My guess is Evil Within is probably significantly longer than Alien Isolation, just because
Yeah,
Evil
probably.
Within is a combat heavy game in which, I mean, RE4 was also, a horror action game, and that game was pretty long, like 15, 20 hours if I remember correctly. And I cannot imagine that Alien Isolation is. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a good grasp on that game yet. I played it once at GDC. I'm interested in it, but I'm worried that the trial and error nature of
Yeah.
fighting the alien is going to get tiring really fast. I'm hopeful that that's just because those are the demos they have to set up, and we're not seeing a whole lot of how it will naturally kind of ebb and flow. But it's hard for me to imagine that game. Like, just how long can they keep that up? But it's a $60 game, so I don't know. You'd have to imagine they're going to try and get 8-10 hours out of it. But it's hard for me to imagine a game like that where they'd be able to get 8-10 hours. I'm curious. I'm definitely curious.
See, I feel that way about Evil Within. I played it very briefly at PAX East, and everyone coming out of PAX East was overwhelmingly underwhelmed
Yeah,
by
that's
it.
there has been a swirl of negativity around the people who have actually played the Evil Within. Maybe
Yeah.
negativity is the wrong word, but when you have Shinji Mikami, who created a ton of incredibly influential, still influential video games, returning to the survival horror genre, in which the last time he did so was RE4,
Yeah.
where RE4 has influenced so many games of the last 10 years. When that man chooses to come back to that genre, you expect that he's going to do it with something to say, and it's the feeling I have got from folks who have played it. I have not played it myself. Was that it seems all right, but not what you expect when Shinji Mikami is coming back to
Yeah.
make a game like this.
Well, like in terms of like horror, like survival horror, any kind of game where you want people to just be terrified. You have the axis, you have like the graph, and up here in like super scary, like did it the right way is Resident Evil Dogs Through the Window.
Yeah.
That's it. That is the bar that you want to hit. You want to hit dogs through the window.
I don't want to hit any dogs through the window. That's
God, sorry, you don't want to hit dogs through. You want to. Okay, all right. Dogs through the window. Super
I
scary.
got you. I'm with you.
But like, I was walking through, and like you turn around, and like there's like a head on the table with some nails in it, and like there's a puddle of blood, and like if you watch the original trailer for it, you have Spider-Woman coming out of a pool of blood, and everything is just. And then you have the box dude, the guy with the box on his head and the meat cleaver, and it's just sort of like there's some blood, there's a really scary thing, there's a head with some nails in it, and it's sort of like not scary in the sense that it's like there's
Maybe
some
it's a
really,
little over the
really,
top.
yeah, it's a little over the top. It's not so much as like, "Boo," like I don't feel like anything's gonna jump out at me and scare me, but I feel like I'm gonna turn a corner and see something shocking and be just like, oh, that's gross. Like it's not there, and I can understand why they delayed it. I think they announced at E3 that it was delayed from August. It was supposed to come out like next week,
Yeah.
and now it's coming out in October. So I hope that that delay gives them more time to sort of bring the Shinji Mikami back and aim for dogs through the window, not so
And
much as
and
like,
I wonder if the worst possible thing that could have happened to Evil Within was PT.
oh
Because
yeah, oh yeah.
I think what you're touching on is actually articulating a little bit of what I've been trying to figure out in terms of my feelings on Evil Within, which is just a distinct lack of subtlety.
Yeah.
And if you like remember like in Resident Evil 4, like that introduction sequence when you get to the village is
Mm.
subtle as hell. Like it's creepy, it's unnerving. The way that mob slowly turns on you and comes at you, like that's an exercise in subtlety. And maybe Evil Within has that, and the way you have to market games these days, the way you have to craft playable demos, maybe it's part. This is what I'm hoping. I'm kind of grasping onto this. Is that maybe a lot of that is there. We just don't see it in a PAX demo or in a trailer
Yeah.
that has to try and fight through the noise of the daily news cycle. But what PT does so well is that it's incredibly subtle, and even though it has jump scares, it deploys them smartly and tactfully, which I don't inherently have a problem with jump scares, but if you over rely on them, they're a cheap tactic that you just start to lose some interest and respect for what they're trying to pull off. And both PT and Alien Isolation are both games that seem to be playing in the subtleties of horror, in which they are trying to really build tension through lighting and shadows and all these little touches that are especially possible with newer hardware. And Evil Within doesn't have to be that, so it can be its own thing, and it can be special and fun and terrifying on its own. It feels a little blunt from what I've seen so far.
So on a scale of zero to dogs through the window, where would you put PT? That's the scale now.
Oh man, PT is probably the most terrifying thing I've engaged with in years in terms of a video game.
Oh, really?
It's probably the scariest thing I've played since Amnesia: The Dark Descent.
Oh yeah.
Which is sort of my high watermark for horror games in recent memory. I really actually I loved the hell out of Slender the 8 Pages. I know that concept has been torn to shreds by the amount of imitators, and it's been kind of run into the ground in that way. But when Slender came out, I mean, I thought there was nothing else like it, and I truly enjoyed everything about it. So like Amnesia and Slender are probably the things that have gotten under my skin the most, other than these like random crappy Oculus demos that are mostly good just because they're VR. And PT is a high watermark, I think. It makes me extremely excited about Silent Hills, but then also kind of bummed that if it's not first person, I think I'm going to be kind of upset. It can still be fine, but I don't think you hire Norman Reedus unless you're going to be showing him off a lot.
That's what I was thinking when people are like, "Oh, it's gonna be a Morpheus thing." But like, why would you hire Norman Reedus if he wasn't gonna be facing the camera like the whole time?
Yeah, and maybe he's just in the cutscenes, but I don't know. Silent Hill's always been a third-person game. The Silent Hill Room, has some first-person sequences, but my guess is that game is third-person when we actually see the proper Silent Hills, which I don't know. I would love to see a full game built out of that little haunted house structure they had going with PT. But maybe that's not possible. Like maybe part of what makes PT work is that it's kind of lightning in a bottle. It's this one hallway. If you tried to repeat that ad nauseum, it wouldn't really work. And I could certainly buy that argument. But I don't know. There's something about horror and first person that you can make scary third person games, but I find if you're going for scaring people, first person is kind of the way to go, which I think is why VR
Yeah.
is so terrifying, because it just takes you a step further in that direction.
I will say, I feel like this is going to be, I feel like a lot of people are going to try to go the PT route for games moving forward. I definitely feel like we're going to see at least one imitation in the next 6 months, year, or whatever, and it's going to be super. I don't know if it would work necessarily for any other genre.
Yeah,
Of
yeah. I
those
mean, it's like I said at the top, that if my choice is getting to play like a little slice of your game versus yet another CG trailer, I think that's pretty
Oh,
cool.
yeah.
But there are probably all sorts of especially big budget games in which a lot of the systems for those games don't really make a lot of sense till the final sprint of development. Like
Right.
there are going to be lots of games where maybe that doesn't make a lot of sense. But for smaller independent productions, as a way of generating interest, if you can play something as opposed to just watching a trailer,
Yeah.
that's maybe something that folks can investigate. But yeah, I think you're right that I think people may end up overplaying their hand because of what's happened with PT, but
Mhm.
that I think it's very specific to this game, or at least this experience, and is maybe not broadly applicable to a whole lot of other things.
Yeah, I feel like it'll get overdone very quickly. I mean, the only other thing I can think of that would probably work. I don't know. This popped into my head. Like, what if they announced like a new like Pokemon Snap Wii U, and it was like a playable teaser? Like
Yeah,
that would be cool.
I'm into that.
That's where my brain went.
You've got me at a new Pokemon Snap.
I want it
Um,
so bad.
but the closest I guess we're going to get to that right now is they announced that new Fatal Frame for Wii U, which uses the camera in a Pokemon Snap-like fashion
Yeah.
for you to snap photos of ghosts to make them disappear. I really hope Nintendo brings that over. It's on them for that to come out over here, and they ignored the Wii one, which bums me out. But I'm crossing my fingers that they are in a desperate enough position that they'll bring over Fatal Frame. Probably not in time for this fall. It seems like if they were going to bring that out here now, they would have done so already. But
Yeah.
I'm hoping that maybe next spring, when there's kind of a gap in the lineup, that we'll get Fatal Frame 5, because I'm replaying Fatal Frame 2 for Giant Bomb as part of a video series, and that game's pretty great. That series is terrifying.
We'll get it. I'm sure we'll get it. There's too many people like it out here.
I hope so. I
Nintendo.
hope so. But Nintendo, they also don't have a problem with sitting on games for inexplicable reasons. So
Yeah, that
I
is
guess.
true.
Um, well, we're nearing that hour mark. Let me see if I pulled out some news stories. Let's see if there's anything worth talking about before we bring this to a close. There was one that I thought was interesting. There's a bunch of interviews coming out of Gamescom, one of which is with Phil Spencer. CVE spoke with him and asked him about Rare. It was a company who was going through some transition. They had some layoffs after their most recent Connect
Yeah.
Sports game did not do so well.
I mean, did you play that game?
No.
It's
Bad?
not that oh, God. I played it when it first came out. I played it on air during a live stream, and it completely failed to work.
Great.
And then a couple months later, it's just like it's not fun. It's just not
Yeah.
fun.
Well, games that go for hyperrealism or one-to-one motion tracking, that seems, I wrote a story about this on Giant Bomb once, where I think that's trying to get the technology to do something that it's not very good at. Doesn't, Microsoft has certainly pitched it that way, that, oh, you can do the one-to-one stuff, and some games have been built for that, but I think you're asking that technology to do something it's not fully capable of pulling off, and the Dance Central style of approximating or interpreting it for you is probably a lot more successful. But
Yeah.
Spencer's quote is, I think it's, so he's talking about the future of Rare. I think it's about them thinking about the next game that's going to be the next Rare game. It really stands for what they are. I know they've got some great ideas. I've not been up there for maybe 6 months, but I'm planning on getting there this fall and seeing bits for the new game. But I know they're hard at work, and Phil Harrison has been talking to them. I don't want the Rare brand to mean Connect Sports. The Rare brand can be more valuable to them, to us, and to gamers than that, which I think is interesting, but at this point I don't know what the Rare brand means to anyone.
Yeah, it's Connect Sports right now.
But even beyond that, like, so many of the talent that was there making Killer Instinct's being made by a different developer.
Yeah.
The Banjo-Kazooie developers have, largely left. The GoldenEye teams have largely left. It's kind of like what's going on with id Software, where the people that made the things you fell in love with that studio no longer are there. So at that point, like, why are they even called Rare anymore?
Right. Like, if you're gonna do something new, put a new label on it. Cause I don't know. I miss Banjo-Kazooie. You brought up the thing that makes me sad.
Man, I played the crap out of Banjo-Kazooie and fell in love with that concept of Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie interacting with one another. That stuff got largely abandoned. I forget how that was going to work. It was like, were the carts going to stack on one another or something?
Oh,
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do, and now I'm like, I don't actually know how that was supposed to work.
I can't remember, but like you can look up videos. People hacked into the ROM to figure out exactly how some of that stuff was going to link to the next game, and it didn't end up happening. Someone will in the chat explain to me the thing I'm forgetting, but yeah, I didn't play Donkey Kong 64. That was a bad game, but I loved everything about Rare from the N64 area. Blast Corps, Perfect Dark, GoldenEye, Banjo-Kazooie. I mean, that company could do no wrong at that time.
Now would be the time to bring it back. Now that people are all like, "Hey," I feel like Banjo-Kazooie would redeem them from Kinect Sports.
If they made, but does anyone want to play like a that kind of platformer in 2014? I feel like people think they want to play one of those, but I'm not sure they actually want to.
Well, look how good Shovel Knight did. Shovel Knight was like super old school.
I guess that's true. Oh, and people are pointing out that they actually sort of ended up implementing that connective tissue in the XBLA versions, which is kind of cool. I never ended up playing that. Yeah, and it's interesting that Spencer mentions keeping that Rare name, because the cynic in me thinks the reason they keep it is because if they announce a new Rare game, that gets more headlines than if they rename that studio and they announced a new game.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much.
Rare announces blah, 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 is going to get a bunch of people interested because they're angry about Rare. As opposed to if they renamed Rare to, Microsoft Studios UK or something, whatever, that wouldn't get nearly as much interest. So, I mean, it's smart on their part to do that, but on some level, I feel like they're doing it just because it maintains a level of interest in a studio that maybe doesn't deserve it at this point.
Yeah, I can see that. That's such a bummer.
Yeah, yes, it is. I agree.
Bummer.
It's a bummer. But what's not about, well, I guess it's a bummer. We're going to bring this show to a close as we hit our mark. I didn't know how to, I was trying to use that as a transition and then realized like all parts of that imply that it's been a bummer is incorrect. I have greatly appreciated you joining me this morning, Alexa. We really like having you on this show. I hope you will come back. We'll see if it's with Alex or not. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know if he deserves it. We'll see.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so people can follow you on Twitter. Was it Alexa Ray C?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have that right? And they can follow your work over at Polygon. Do you have anything coming up that you want to tease for folks? I know you've got a Kiba strip review coming down the pike sometime soon. But what else are you working on that people can look forward to?
Probably not this week and probably not next week, but if you're a big fan of my Tolkien brain, then I've got something in the works.
Ooh, all right, okay. So you're gonna finally be able to channel your one nerd side into your other nerd side and combine the two.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we will look forward to that. We will definitely have you on again when Shadow of Mordor arrives, so you can. You can let us know how that is, and we can geek out with you with hopefully what is hopefully a very good game. I want that game to be rad. I fear for your sanity if that game sucks.
Oh my god! I played about an hour of it at E3, and I really liked what I was doing. So me too.
Awesome. All right. Well, looking forward to that. We'll have to have you back when that game comes out. And thanks again for joining us, and everyone else. We will see you on Friday. Alex will be back from watching dudes in spandex yell at each other in a stadium. I think that's what they call wrestling. So that's what he's been doing this weekend with Dan Reichert. They've been filming some stuff and recording some stuff that I'm sure will go up throughout the week. But I will see you guys all on Friday. Au.